Welcome to History Minutes with Mr. Flynn. Today, April 21st, 2020, is Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, or Yom HaShoah. It serves to commemorate the senseless murder of more than 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany. However, why remember? Why do we remember such a horrific event in human history? There's many answers to this question, but all these answers really boil down to one common theme. We remember so it does not happen again. Now, you may think that nothing like this could ever happen again since the Holocaust, because it was such a horrific event that no way would we try to repeat something like this. But there have been many other attempted genocides since the Holocaust in places like Cambodia, Rwanda, and Bosnia, and other places as well. We must remember the Holocaust and the millions of innocent victims, and we must remember what hate can do if left unchecked. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the Holocaust and why we remember. The Holocaust really it began in Nazi Germany in 1933 when Adolf Hitler came to power. He came to power because of the Enabling Acts. That's a different story, but hey, check it out. It's an interesting story as well. Once in power, though, Hitler began to exclude the Jews from German life. This included boycotting Jewish businesses, removing Jews from German schools, and establishing what a Jew actually was. It escalated more in 1935, with the Nuremberg laws, which allowed the seizure of Jewish businesses. It allowed the Germans to take away the citizenship of the Jews, and it made it illegal for Germans to marry Jews, as well as many other restrictions. The Holocaust entered a new phase in 1939 when the Jews were removed from their homes and placed into ghettos all around Europe. These ghettos basically allowed them to cut the Jews off further from society, but also allowed them to be monitored a bit easier. Thousands of Jews died in these ghettos due to starvation and disease because they were overcrowded. They were rampant with disease at times, and just supplies were hard to get. So many people died because of this overcrowded. It was also during this time that the Jews were forced to wear the yellow stars. And if you were caught outside without your yellow star on, you could be arrested or even executed. In fact, while in the ghettos, the Jews were in danger of being killed constantly. This phase of the Holocaust also resulted in the Jews being placed in forced labor camps or concentration camps. At these camps, Jews were shaved, they were tattooed with a number, because after that, that's all they were to the Nazi Germans, were numbers. And they were forced to work 12, 14 hours a day, live in cramped, unsanitary living conditions, and they were given very little food. So many Jews were worked to death. Many died of starvation in the camps as well. The next phase of the Holocaust began in 1941, when systematic executions began. The Nazis began this phase in Ukraine with mobile killing units called the Einsatzgruppen. The Nazi army would go in, conquer an area, and then the Einsatzgruppen would come in behind them and take care of the Jewish population. These executions were very humanless, I guess would be a way of putting it. They would dig trenches, make the Jews line up at the edge of these trenches, and then shoot them, and then they'd fall into the trenches, and then they put another line of Jews, and it just very dehumanizing, very heartless. So this is how these systematic executions sort of began. The Nazi German army was really the spearhead for this, followed by the Einsatzgruppen, of course. In 1942, the Nazi German High Command planned the destruction of the European Jews, and this was known as the final solution. This involved the industrialized murder of the Jews in the concentration camps. Death camps were established, and gas chambers and crematoriums were also used in this process. The largest of these death camps was Auschwitz, where approximately 1.1 million Jews were murdered. The final stage of the Holocaust occurred in 1944 and 45, when the concentration camps were finally liberated by the Allied troops. The first camp to be liberated was Majdanek by the Soviet Red Army. the Nazis had tried to hide what was going on. They tried to destroy evidence of what was going on because they knew what they were doing was wrong. So they tried to destroy the evidence. They tried to empty the camps before the Allies could get to them. They actually took the Jewish prisoners on death marches. And these marches would often last weeks at a time. And many Jews, of course, would die on these death marches because of the cold temperatures. It was in the dead of winter that they did this. So the cold temperatures, starvation, and then summer executions. If you couldn't keep up with the march, you were killed. Simple as that. The camps were all eventually liberated, and the world was able to witness the unspeakable things that happened to the Jews. The perpetrators were put on trial at the Nuremberg trials in 1945 and 46, and many German officers and soldiers were put on trial and faced prison time and execution. So, and the execution, I guess the crime, was crimes against humanity, where that phrase comes from. They were put on trial for crimes against humanity. So why do we remember all this? I mean, this is just a quick summary of the phases. I hope that you will take some of this information and look into it further. But the real question is, why do we remember this? Why do we remember such a horrible event? Well, we remember so we know what hate can do. We need to remember so we can stand up against hate. We can stand up to the hate and the divisiveness it brings to our society. How do we fight hate? Well, really through acceptance and love. But acceptance, not toleration, acceptance. Toleration allows you to dislike and hate still. You tolerate someone's point of view. You can still hate them, you can still dislike them. Acceptance means you're accepting them, you're accepting the differences. Acceptance allows you to respect differences in religion, political ideology, culture, and still, be civil to one another when it comes down to it. Until we as a human race realize that it's okay to choose sexuality. It's okay to have different political views. It's okay to be who you are as long as you're not hurting anybody or harming other people. It's okay to do all that. Until we learn to accept, we'll be really continuously at a risk of repeating the most heinous crime we as humans have ever committed. I mean, 6 million people plus 6 million Jews plus 5.5 million other groups were murdered in the Holocaust. And of those 6 million Jews, 1.5 million were children. So, and we don't want to repeat that. So we need to learn from the Holocaust and stand up to hate. And I think one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard about why it's important to stand up and to hate came from one of my colleagues at Riverview High School, who said to my history class one year, when you bully, you are not doing the same thing that the Nazis did in the Holocaust, but you are at the beginning of the same road. So these words were spoken by Mr. Joel Fogarty, and to me, they're the perfect answer to why we remember the Holocaust. So we don't repeat it again, and we must learn to stand up to hate. So, take this, please do a little bit more investigation, look into the different phases, look into some of the other stories, and I hope you get something from this lesson today, and I hope you will remember the events of the Holocaust and learn to stand up to hate. Thank you.